Welcome guys to a new sort of video type on this channel. Today we go over an in-depth analysis sort of on the new Steam Maiden deck and how they will look like with of course the new support. So I've already been playtesting some bit with the new deck. Already have some quite rough ideas on how I want to build it. But this isn't a final list. This is just to give you guys an intake on what my thoughts are, what my ideas are for the new deck, what you can expect or a rough list to look like, and what the reasoning behind the card is, of course. So we'll just go right into it, of course, and if you have any discussions or questions or anything, comment down below because I would like to see your opinions as well and what your take is on the deck. So we'll just go right into it. So one V starter. Each starters just very common, you can choose between three. I just choose this one for Gear Chronicle, and that's really about it. And I would just like leave everything important in rows of course, then you can see what really works together and stays together as well. So for the real core of this deck, like you really need, if you're talking about the Steam Maiden deck, there's nothing really other than the 4 Illuls. So she is the main boss unit of this deck. She's the core card. She's the card that gives you advantage in the board presence multi-tech and can make herself really amazing and huge. Usually around 28k, which is just the perfect number because then you don't really need a booster. Of course it can be helpful and handy to have one. She of course herself like is the core of the deck and you cannot really play any other main grade 3 in the deck. Of course you have the grade 3 Ilsa, I think, that can superior right to any grade form, then right back to grade 2, but it doesn't really work in this deck as well as in other types of decks. Then we play the 4 copies of the Steam Maiden grade 2, which we already got in the past, and then 4 copies of the grade 1. So I will just cover this guy. Like this is already enough to talk about because first we play these all at 4 because reasoning would be like you don't really have a Steam Maidens yet. Yes, of course you do have, but they're not really that impactful or not that worth to play. And the grade 1 you really want to play because it's an amazing right target on grade 1. The grade 2 is actually the worst Steam Maiden in my opinion because in all of these again all of these, because the reasoning behind that is let's say for example you have your grade 1, you have amazing grade 2s to like superior go into. Before the grade 2 into grade 3 it's less so. Like you of course have in the previous build Piano, which we still play, you have of course Elo, which you still play, but they're not like that amazing compared to your grade 2s. Really have some draw power, have some setup potential, have some disruption, and also opening with an additional grade 1 in your opening hand isn't actually too bad. And the reasoning behind that is, let's say for example you went first. So your opponent, you went first, you ride into it and you just set up a little bit. Then if you already have a grade 2 in your bind zone, you ride into a grade 2, which can be any Steam Maiden as long as you have a Steam Maiden name, and you can just call a additional grade 1 Vanguard. So with that you already have your grade 2 set up in your bind zone and to superior go into, let's say for example it's a Caliban, or either you have a Caliban or 2. If you're playing against a very aggressive deck in the early game, you can actually like punish them quite hard for it, because you can of course use first Caliban from your hand, find itself, then use the grade 1 to go into a Caliban, and then use Caliban once again to disrupt 2 opponent units in turn. It will cost you in total, like you use 3 counterblasts, but you can't charge 2 back, so it's actually costs 1 counterblast. But the important thing about this strategy is that you need to have 2 phases of counterblast to begin with. The reasoning behind that is because you use the first Caliban to instantly counter back, because if your opponent is rushing you early game, then of course you counter charge immediately because it's a grade 1. That's or they need to play, for example, a Bermuda Triangle, which you only need then it needs to be a slot, but you can still work around that. You send back the grade 1 or less, then you attack with this one, of course, use the first counterblast, which will be face down, and then you use your second Caliban, which can use this counter blast and can be stayed on because you have 2 in total. So that's a really good play to send back the lot or such anything. And then you need to grade 1 in your drop zone. Usually, let's say for example your opponent rushes you with grade 1s. Then you can of course send back still a grade 1, get your drop power back setup, and have actually quite a good bit of setup already. Just with grade 1 in your band zone, the grade 2. So opening with a additional grade 1 isn't all that bad. Like the scenario that I'm talking about is very specific, but it has some moving parts in it, which you can make work with other cards as well. The grade 2 on the other hand works quite different because, as I've said, like the play can be the same, but you have worse grade 3s to go into. Also, setting up grade 3s in your binds is quite hard in the early game to manage, of course, because your grade 2s can like send themselves to the bind zone most of the time, or can set up the bind zone, and you of course have the grade 1 to set them up in the bind zone. But the grade 1 cannot send the grade 3 to the bind zone from your hand, so it's a little bit awkward in that, and you play a low number of grade 3s already. So with that, you have a strategy behind it, and I actually see myself playing this at 3 copies because you only need to see her one of your combo. Like this, you want to play at 4 because it's not only a good right target, you want to see it on the field, on the hand, because you will be using it multiple times. Then, so for example, you go for your finishing turn, you have your grade 0, which is your Ulu on the side, because this will go into grade 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then, of course, if you have a different column, you have your grade 1 setup right there, then you have your 1, 2, and 3, because you still have those skills at your disposal. They are not hard ones per turn. So you can make in total like 7 attacks, but you need a second copy of this on your hand or either on your field to begin with. This one only did the bind zone and it does everything already. So I can see myself cutting this to 3 off, but I want to play it at 4 because you want to play more steam minutes in this deck. That's at least a strategy behind the new cards, to like effectively plus more. So that's just how I played it for now. It's just a strategy. You guys can of course try it for yourself. I think I will be cutting this to 3 because of that reasoning, but that's just up to you. Then of course to finish up that play, we still play the 4 Steam Maiden Ulu. We can also try and like take a little bit of a risk by playing the 1 heal card. The reasoning behind that is of course you have more grade 4s, of course, in the Ulu department. Ulu is also grade 4 that has been coming back to this format, to the V format, of course. So you have reason to play Lost Gearlock 8 more, but I don't really like that card yet. I will be testing it out on how it works, but for now I will just stay with this. But of course, if you go for this strategy, you can of course go for 1 heal guard to have a little bit of like anti-rush against Texans format. But that's just around it. Like, this is already a line that we played in the past. It works quite well, but it actually has like become less effective in the sense that you not like play like less effective, but more like you have such good replacements that you want to maybe tweak a little bit with this lineup in the form of the grade 2 and the grade 0, but yeah, that's just optional now. Then of course we have the new grade 2, which I just printed out, so it's a proxy. It doesn't have a skill right here because it's all in Japanese, but I have the skills right in my mind. So this of course can count with 1, which I took grade 1, so you definitely will play 4 copies of the grade 1 in combination with the grade 2. With this you have a perfect lineup of that you don't really screw yourself over by not searching it, of course. But of course I also want to play it both at 4 copies to see how they play out. What I usually do with new cards, I immediately play them as 4-offs, just to see what the power potential is and what I can use them with. Because let's say for example I playtest, of course, and I don't see those cards. I don't actually play those new playtesting those new cards. So I usually play them at high copies already, just to see what the impact is. So that's the 4 copies of grade 2 and 4 copies of grade 1. Also, by the grade 1, you already have quite a lot of teammates already in a lineup. As you may see, you of course have 4, 8, 12, 16-20 targets already, only by this lineup. And that's already quite a lot to effectively see a Steve Maiden on your top 3. Also, it can fix your right line quite big, because of course, if you write this and you see your grade 2, you already have it set up. Let's say, for example, you see your grade 1, you can of course already start doing things. But the really important thing is seeing that grade 2, which emphasizes us even more on playing at high copies, because this grade 2 is very effective in the early in the mid game, because it can draw you and card every single turn. But the downside of the grade 2 actually is you don't want to even run it at big numbers, since like you want to see it at big numbers because you want to see it as soon as possible. But the problem I went into this deck, at your grade 1 turn you Soul Blast or grade 0 out already with grade 1. That means you don't have a grade 2 or like you don't have a second soul on your grade 2 turn. So you can only use her like second skill once. Then you add into your grade 3, you don't use any soul anymore, so you can do this skill every single turn. And with how consistent the attack is, you keep rewriting and you keep Soul Blasting one card out every single turn. That's no problem. But by using more of this grade 2, that's not really possible, because you don't accumulate 2 soul every single turn. Also, you're not in the scenario where you probably don't have that 2 soul. But there's a way to counteract that, and that's by intercepting it with a bunch of times. So let's use it, intercept with it, and the next turn you just call it once again from the hand, use a counter blast, search your grade 1, search your and one of any Steam in the top 3, and with that you gain a value every single turn by playing more copies. But of course you don't have the downside that you need to commit 2 down, which then you cannot really use the second skill. Also, you keep your one circle open to use your Steam Maiden place with, so you can go from your grade 0 to your grade 1, 2, and 3. So that's a real strategy behind it. That's already for the grade 2 and the grade 1, why I play this at 4. I just still play this thing, but I think I will be staying with it. Then, as I have already said, I don't really play Lost Gearlock Egg. I really like Steam Breath more in this deck, because of that it is a 30k beater, and it can search out my grade 3 at the top 5. The reason behind that is like, I get that the consistency is almost the same as Lost Gearlock 8. Or like Lost Gearlock 8, maybe even more consistent. Especially when we look at like how Jet works, because Jet has 4 Jets and then 5 main grade 4s in the deck. This deck right now plays 6 grade 3s, and then like 3 grade 4s. You don't play the heal card, so it's like less than the Jet deck, but I think still consistent enough. I haven't played this yet. A variant yet where you play the Lost Gearlock 8, where this card really makes an impact, is where you can discard your early Steam Maidens early on, like grade 2 to the grade 1, even the grade 0 if you really want to, of course. And with this Lost Gearlock 8 you can't really do that. Yes, you can do that, but you need to discard multiples. That's not really ideal. The reason why you want to discard those Steam Maidens early on, because we play 3 copies of the Ulu. So Ulu really fixes like your early and your late game. And what I mean by that is, let's say for example in the early game, use the grade 1, then of course you bind, let's say for example heal, the ideal situation. Then you want to have your grade 2 in your bind zone, of course, still, and let's say for example a grade 3, doesn't really matter which one. You want to have that grade 2, grade 3 and a grade 1. Like the grade 1, put the grade 0 into the bind zone. The grade 1 is in the soul, but you can keep get it out because of the grade 2. So this is a drop zone, and this, let's say for example, use discard for Steam Breath, so it's also in drop zone. So that's like the ideal situation. Like if you get these off, you probably also get Elo off because of the consistency, also this off because of the consistency of this deck, because it draws a lot, filters a lot, and by that grade 1 and 2 in the drop zone. Like your main grade 3 can put a card from your drop zone in the bind zone, but then you're still missing by 1. That's where Ulu comes in, because by just gardening early, which can make weird lines with your counter blast, it makes it so you have your extra card into your bind zone in advance to your grade 3 turn. So that fixes everything. It can make it so, let's say for example, you do your grade 1, go into your grade 2, where your counterblast of course, that you have one counterblast face down and no counterblast open, that your opponent just leaves you out counterblast. That isn't really that big of an issue because Elo can just counter. So what most likely play then is, so let's say for example you go from grade 2, 0 to your grade 1, then to any grade 2. Either leave it there or use the skill if it doesn't really cost a counterblast. Also you can still go for your Steam Maiden, you gain some power and of course set up your binds for future plays. That's also an option. That's how you can play it. So as you may see, like this combo is also really convenient, and that's why I play these at 3 shifts. As I said earlier as well, I play this as a high number, like 3 or 4 copies, just to see it as consistent as possible to make my play testing more consistent. Then I played 2 copies of Caliban. This I played as well in the past. The reasoning behind this is because it's essentially an unbreak card. Let's say for example I miss my grade 2, then I can just put a grade 2 in mind zone, just do your Uru play, or your grade 1 Steam Maiden plays with Uru, I mean. And then you can make some quite like intricate plays. But you also have, as I explained earlier, you can counter early aggressiveness from your opponent. So you have multiple lines of play. But you also have Nabu, which you can work around often. Like playing either the Caliban or the Udo, like 2 cards of the same coin. Like they both fulfill different options. But I don't know yet if I keep it like this. Play 4 Caliban, play 4 Nabu, maybe even play only one of those at 2 copies. It's still an option. Like in the past when we played Current, I either could search out the missing grade 2 or just any missing card essentially, but now I need to hard draw those. Also what really is weird with this, with these 4 cards, let's say for example in a later game, you never use them. The reasoning behind it is, you have your Engilsa on your record circle, which has a boost behind it, so you can keep that 1+ every single turn. And you have your other circle where you can use your grade 0 into your grade 1 and do your essential Steam Maiden plays, but then you don't have any room for your grade 2, so that's a really bit of an awkward spot for you to keep in. So you don't want to overextend with those like renewable grade 2s, because they refund themselves back, but you need to have an open, or like you need to have a record circle to put them in. So I'm still playtesting with these and just see how they work. And then for the last 2 copies of this deck, or in the main deck, that is not a trigger, is of course 2 pianos. I find this still works really convenient with this deck because you do a lot of multi-attack plays, as I've said earlier. If you have grade 1 onto in hand, you play 0, then you can make 7 attacks in total, 8 attacks with your Vanguard. If you then have a piano for example, you really can crush your opponent quite hard, especially when you have it on hand. So this is like what I explained earlier about the grade 1 is really convenient to go into any grade 2 essentially in the early game. The grade 2 isn't that big of an impact, but it's really nice to, even though, let's say for example you go to late stages and you don't have the grade 1, then go from the grade 2 into the grade 3, like in the sense of piano when your opponent is 5, is still really huge. But as I explained earlier, like you don't really need this at 4 to see it at that stage of the game, because you will be going through a lot of your deck already. So you have that consistency where even if you play it at 3 copies, then you still see it. And then for the rest of the trigger lineup, which we will just go quickly to, then we play 3 crits, in total 6. It doesn't really change from here, just because of the fact that I find this deck more of like a multi-attack deck. Of course crits can really help because your Vanguard is huge, but this deck is also really a peaceful line deck. So I tend to play with an additional 2 copies of draw triggers, and then of course the 4 draw PGs. I just like this ratio. I don't know if it will be staying like this for now, because you have a lot more consistency draw power in this deck due to the grade 1 to grade 2, and of course the Uru to sort of set up your bind zone already. So that's it for how I tend to build a deck. Also, of course, you have the one starter, which I talked earlier about. And this is how I roughly play the deck and playtest it. So comment down below if you have any questions, of course, and leave a discussion if you think like a certain card should be played otherwise or anything like that. So see you guys later. Goodbye.